Wow, this has been quite an awards ceremony. So I have the honor of introducing the last awardee here for the Eugene Shoemaker Distinguished Scientist Medal. This medal is named after American geologist and one of the founders of our field of planetary science, Eugene Shoemaker. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award given to a scientist who significantly contributed to our understanding of the moon and small bodies in the solar system. The 2022 Eugene Shoemaker Distinguished Scientist Medal is awarded to Dr. Lisa Gaddis for her significant scientific contributions throughout the course of her career. As director of the Lunar and Planetary Institute, LPI, Dr. Gaddis is providing scientific leadership and management of the research and operations of LPI in support of NASA's strategic goals in planetary science and solar system exploration. Prior to her appointment to USRA and LPI, Dr. Gaddis was at the USGS in Flagstaff, where she worked since 1990 as a scientist, administrator, and supervisor. Dr. Gaddis holds a BA from Vassar College, an MS from Brown, and a PhD from the University of Hawaii. She brings broad scientific expertise spanning geology and geophysics, remote sensing, planetary science, space mission planning and operations, cartography, and data archiving, quite a list. Her research interests include analyzing the composition, physical properties, and geologic history of planetary surfaces in our solar system using remote sensing data at a variety of wavelengths. She's served as PI on more than 35 NASA projects, including the NASA Planetary Data System Cartography and Imaging Sciences node from 2004 to 2020. Lisa also served as chief scientist for the USGS astrogeology program, serving as PI of the NASA Planetary Cartography Research Program from 2003 to 2007. Her NASA flight mission expertise includes science and operation roles on the Mars exploration rovers, MER, and a as a LRO participating scientist. She's a prolific author. She's published numerous papers in various scientific journals, several book chapters, and has served on several committees and advisory groups for NASA on national and international space science and exploration plans. She's a fellow of the Geological Society of America and a recipient of the U.S. Department of the Interior Honor Award for Meritorious Service. It's our pleasure to bestow Dr. Lisa Gaddis with the 2022 Shoemaker Award. Lisa. I'd like to show everyone the medal that Lisa has won. And on the back, it says a quote from Shakespeare, "And he will make the face of heavens so fine that all the world will be in love with night." Sure.
Thank you. Can I take this on? Thank you very much. Wow, this is such an honor, and I also feel somewhat speechless after that wonderful introduction. And I must say, I have been just so inspired by the stories. I know most of the award winners today, but I did not know all of them. I'm really honored to be standing among them today. And I thank SSERVI, I thank Greg, I thank this group for giving me this honor. And I really hope my allergies don't bother me too much. I'm sorry. So the primary message that I have for you today in my scientific talk is just thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to work with you all. You'll hear this again in just a minute. I don't really have that many slides for you, but I want to say thank you to you all, to my friends, to my colleagues. You've heard my my career record. And so this is a list of many of the people that I've worked with in many of these places. I want to mention that I started at a STEM magnet school in New Orleans. And I mention this mostly because it's the same school that Bill McKinnon went to, and that Judith, wife of Dan Britt, whom you all know, went to. So in the category of it's a very small world, that was where it all began for me in many ways. I did want to say that it's not really possible, and no one really has tried it here today for good reason. It's not possible to list everyone that I would say thank you to. So although I've listed quite a few names here, there are so many more, especially those that I've shared papers with as co-author, as first author, and so on. So many thank yous there, and also so many friends who are not in planetary science in one way or another, whom I intersected with in many of these places. I feel like I'm just getting started at the LPI. I've been there since 2020, was at USGS for 30 years, almost exactly. So I have a bit longer list there so far. And there are so many people to thank in all of these places. I especially need to thank my family. They're the foundation of my life. And thank you to my husband, Jim, who is a mineral physicist, spent many years at ASU, so many in this community know him as well. To our children, Katie and Tom, to my sisters, my brothers, my niece and her family. Without my family, none of this would have been possible. Monday this week was the 25th anniversary of Gene's death. And befitting the name of this honor, I thought I would tell you a little bit about him for those of you who did not meet him and who did not know him. As Greg said, he's the father of astrogeology, the founder of the USGS program that I worked at for so many years, but also so much more. His expertise was field geology, geology in general. He effectively began the discipline of impact crater studies, also created pretty fundamental maps of the moon, was involved in training astronauts for Apollo. He retired from USGS in 1993, in part because some of his recognition of the importance of impact cratering, especially for those of us on Earth, was not shared by some at NASA in the sense of ready funding for him. But he continued in the research that he had started, and he passed away after a car accident in 1997. And his ashes were later sent to the moon as part of the Lunar Prospector mission. So his program was, especially after retiring, but also a bit before, he called it a mom and pop operation. And if you haven't seen the National Geographic video called, I think, Asteroids Deadly Impact, I really recommend it because it's a great overview of many years of his life and his reason for being and his work with Carolyn. He was discoverer of Shoemaker Levy 9 in 1993, and he and many others observed an impact of that string of pearls into Jupiter in 1994. And as I said, he was one of the founders of impact cratering as a science, but he also understood the importance of impact cratering as a cause potentially for mass extinction, and that led to the field of near-Earth object research that has grown so much since those early days. And from him, I have many lessons. Anyone who knew Gene has heard him laugh. He had a really loud, boisterous laugh that pretty much involved everyone within earshot around him, and he laughed a lot. My office was a long way from his in Building 1 at USGS, and I heard him laugh often. I heard him laugh before I ever met him. I, in fact, met him on a riverboat cruise during GSA many years ago, I think in the 80s, dancing along with many other geologists as part of the GSA meeting, and dancing and laughing. I also learned take your family when possible. This was his version of work-life balance. I learned from him that there's always a new discovery around the corner. I was lamenting many years ago, and in fact, my last conversation with him in 1997, I was lamenting that I had missed the landing of Mars Pathfinder, which I had worked for several years toward, because I had my son, and he said, well, there are more important things than missions, but there's always another mission coming, and the future is bright, and you'll have many opportunities. And he was right then, and he's right now. And as I look around, there will be many opportunities. We live in a golden age. And also just from his life and his continued pursuits later in his life, I took away the lesson of never stop learning. And I have not done this and don't intend to stop. And I observe that to generally be true among my science colleagues. I also want to tell you something about Carolyn. So I met Carolyn during my early days at USGS in the early 90s, but I didn't know her very well initially. She was quite remarkable. I knew her initially as Jean's wife, the way that most others did. But she was an amazing person, and she viewed herself as just an ordinary person. And she told us often how amazing those of us in astrogeology and in the planetary science community in general were to her, and how inspiring we were. She was held records for discovery of asteroids and minor planets and comets. She was very instrumental in the discovery of comet Shoemaker-Levy 9. She was a world-renowned, very lauded scientist with no formal science training. She started her science career at the age of 51 as her children left home. And from her, I learned that patience and perseverance and a sense of humor, especially, both she and Jean laughed at themselves loudly and often, a very important part of who they were. And if you knew Jean at all, you know that patience was a virtue in living and working with him. He was quite a character. And again, you never know who will inspire you. As I said, she viewed herself as just an ordinary person, but she was so much more than that. And she said often that those of us around her were inspirations to her as well. And what a wonderful gift that was. And she had friends. So in her later years, many of us supported her in a variety of different ways. Because she had lost Jean, and everywhere that we went with her, whatever we did with her, and many things that she, of course, did on her own, she had friends everywhere she went. Everyone was her friend. And I think that is also something of an inspiration. So I thought I would share with you some of her words. You've heard some of these from Carolyn earlier today. And the article that I'm quoting from is down at the bottom. If you haven't looked at that, it's a wonderful summary of her career, of Jean's career, and what they meant to each other to some extent, and the significance of those years. And she noted that the awareness of our human need for others has dominated much of my thinking. Family and friends have been very important in her own recovery, and the concept of their importance is as essential as the need for knowledge of our physical world. And especially her comment, without the human relationships we cherish, knowledge would count for naught. Both are to be nourished. Henceforth, I'll continue my scientific exploration, knowing that I must not neglect the other side of living. And that other side of living, I think, is what it's all about fundamentally. And mostly what I want to say today really is just thank you. Working with you all has been my very great honor and my pleasure. We are all extremely lucky to be working in this field. Space is our future, and the future is bright. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those wonderful words, Lisa. Allergies are kind of the theme today, aren't they? Can we get a round of applause for all of our awardees, please?